Brief remarks, and I'll open it up for any questions. So my name is Larry Kessler with the Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research, and today I'm pleased to release our annual economic report to the governor. So this report provides both a short-term 10 quarters ahead outlook for the state economy, as well as a more long-term forecast looking 10 years out. So to kind of hit some of the highlights, the Tennessee economy, like the U.S. as a whole, has seen very strong economic growth over the last 2.5 years. Tennessee real GDP, which measures the value of all goods and services produced in the economy, and is really our best measure for overall economic growth in the state of Tennessee. It rose by an incredibly strong 9.2% in 2021, and then another above trend rate of 4.8% in 2022. So we saw strong growth continue into the first quarter of this year, but then we've also now seen signs of kind of a cooling economy starting to emerge as consumer spending has slowed and job growth has slowed in more recent months. In addition to those, the resumption of student loan payments and continued high interest rates could hinder economic growth in the near term as well. So as a result, we're projecting that Tennessee real GDP growth will slow in the near term, but importantly, economic growth will remain positive. So expectations are that Tennessee real GDP will grow by 3.3% this year, and then decelerate to 1.8% in 2024 as consumer spending normalizes and the economic recovery continues to wind down. So then a similar pattern is expected for the state labor market. Tennessee non-farm employment is projected to grow by around 74,000 jobs this year, but then see a much more moderate addition of only 34,000 jobs in 2024. And as a result of this slower job growth, Tennessee's unemployment rate, which currently sits at a nearly all-time low of 3.3%, it'll slowly start to tick upwards, hitting 3.5% by annual average for 2024, and then 3.6% for 2025. But importantly, from a historical standpoint, this is still an incredibly low rate of unemployment and represents a very healthy labor market. Furthermore, the state rate is projected to remain below the national unemployment rate, which is expected to reach 4.7% by 2025. And in general, Tennessee's economic outlook is more favorable than that of the nation's. This is largely due to stronger population gains in Tennessee as more people continue moving into the state. So in 2022 alone, Tennessee added nearly 82,000 new residents through domestic migration. That was actually the highest level of net domestic migration that we've ever seen in the data for a single year. And this is really important because population growth, it's a strong contributor to economic growth in general, as it leads to, as there's more people who live in the state, there's more people consuming and spending money, more people in the labor market, and just more economic activity in general. So then, in addition to the forecast, we also examine Tennessee's housing market, which has seen a surge in prices over the last few years due to an increase in demand as more people are moving to the state, persistently low supply of available homes, especially more affordable homes, and interest rate policies by the Federal Reserve. So there are a number of reasons for the housing supply issues, both in Tennessee and the U.S. as a whole, including a shortage of construction labor, zoning restrictions, and a shortage of available land, especially in some suburban and urban areas. In addition, rising building costs have become a major factor in more recent years. And as a result, profit margins, especially for building more moderately priced homes, have become increasingly tight, and builders have been more inclined to build larger homes. So as a result, the construction of more affordable homes has declined really since the Great Recession, which has made it much more difficult for first-time homebuyers to find housing. So as a result of all these factors, prices in Tennessee have risen dramatically. And as of last fall, median home prices among active listings in Tennessee are now higher than the national average. So in addition to a low inventory of homes for sale, there's a shortage for renters exists as well. And as a result, median rental prices have risen by over 30% since 2019. Yet despite both higher home prices and higher rent prices, wages in Tennessee remain below the national average. And this discrepancy between home prices and earnings is putting the goal of homeownership out of reach for many Tennesseans, and those who are renting are becoming increasingly cost burdened. Finally, to end kind of on a more positive note, every year we write a chapter on something that we view as topical, and this year's chapter is about business formation in Tennessee. So to hit some of the highlights, the creation of new businesses in both Tennessee and the U.S. has just surged in the wake of the pandemic. And we discussed various reasons for that in chapter 3, including the big one is the shift to online shopping, which led to just a proliferation of online retail stores. And then we also look in this chapter, we look at more recent trends in business formation and find that growth in new business filings has slowed in recent quarters, but the number of new businesses created each quarter is still well above pre-pandemic levels. So this is really important because we also find that business formation, it's a really good leading indicator for overall economic growth in Tennessee. And this trend of slower but still positive business formation growth is consistent with our kind of overall economic forecast of slower but still positive economic growth in the near term. All right, so with that, I'll stop and I'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, I have one. I was wondering, you talked about all these trends that are statewide in Tennessee. I was curious, how do these kind of manifest in Knoxville and here in East Tennessee? Are they the same or do they differ at all?
I mean, it depends on the data we're talking about, but in terms of the one I'll latch onto at the moment is housing. We're actually definitely seeing a much larger increase in the price of housing in Knoxville and most of the urban areas than Tennessee in general, and then the US in general. So there's actually a really cool graph in chapter 1 of the report that colleague Seth Neller put together that shows rising house prices in various MSAs. And Knoxville is actually seeing the strongest housing price growth among all metropolitan areas in the country. And I think that's a testament to just a lot more people moving to Tennessee in the last couple of years, and a lot of them coming to Knoxville.
Is it sustainable that we can continue to have higher home prices with lower wages than the U.S. average?
No. I think the big thing that really needs to happen is we need to figure out a way to prioritize building more affordable housing, both in Knoxville and all the urban areas in the state, and really just all the state in general. And that's an issue for the nation as well. But I think in the interim, it's going to be really difficult, and it already is very difficult for people to afford housing with below median wages.
Do you expect population growth, which surged after the pandemic, was that a short-term thing, or does Tennessee continue to have above average population growth long-term?
I mean, so far we've continued to see it through 2022. I expect growth will slow to some extent next year, probably remain positive though, just because this was just such in 2022, just such a dramatic increase in the population. Like I said, almost 82,000 new residents came through domestic migration, and that's almost double what we've seen in previous years. So I imagine we'll kind of go back to kind of something more closer to trend, but I do predict that we'll still see kind of rising population growth for the near term.
Knox County saw continued robust new business activity last year, whereas other counties hit a wall. Is there an explanation for that? And I'll go ahead and ask this too, do you track businesses that have started and then have discontinued? Are these businesses that started in 2020 and 21, are they sustainable?
Yeah, those are great questions. That's something, especially the Knoxville thing, that we've been thinking about a lot. So far, we don't have like a bulletproof answer for why Knoxville continues to see this robust growth in business formation. The only thing that I've been able to point to so far is that Knoxville has also seen just a ton of the new movers have come to Knoxville. So we've seen this massive uptick in population growth. I think Knoxville saw the largest increase in population gains among all counties last year. So I think that's one of the reasons we've seen kind of this rise in business formation as well. As for tracking businesses over time, we don't look at individual businesses, but we do track whether there's an increase in dissolution, so business folding, kind of in aggregate. But we haven't looked at, we don't have the data, the micro level data to look at whether a business started and whether they closed shop a couple of years later.
What do you think what's the biggest challenge that the Tennessee economy faces in this next year? And then kind of along with that, what is Knoxville's biggest challenge?
Well, I think for both it's housing and the cost of housing. And I think that's as we've talked, as we've heard in the news over the last year or two, inflation has just been a big economic news story. And while inflation is coming down, there was new CPI data that came out today that shows it coming down even further, slowly at least. The one of the components that's still rising is shelter costs. And so I think that is good. And it's just such a large component of a household's budget that it just eats away at everybody's purchasing power. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for both Tennessee and Knoxville.
You mentioned earlier that that Tennessee needs to build more affordable housing because wages are low. What are the forecasts for wages on the flip side of that? What's the forecast for wage growth in Tennessee?
Yeah, we have wages growing. I don't have the exact growth rate on hand or in my pocket, but we do have positive wage growth for both the near and long term, and it's going to slightly outpace the wage growth in the U.S. as a whole. But since we're so far behind the U.S., we're not getting in terms of actual wages or median wages in Tennessee, they're not going to catch up to national wages through the long-term projections, which go out to 2033.
Yep. Okay, good.
All right. I think unless there's any other questions, I appreciate everybody coming today and all the great questions. And I'm happy to, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to please reach out to Erin or I'd be happy to chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.